This is Reverend Don Lewis coming to you from beautiful Florida. And today our question comes to us from Salem, Massachusetts, educator, author, and media personality Peter Alachi, whose birthday also happens to be today, and who's one of the nicest people you'd ever want to meet. So happy birthday, Peter. And Peter's question is not an unusual one in the realm of time theory. And his question is, if someone were born in 1960 and they were to go back to 1957 and kill their parents, intentionally or accidentally I assume, would that mean that they would cease to exist having never been born? And again, this is a very common scenario that you encounter in discussions of time magic and time streams, and especially in science fiction. What is the answer to it? Well, you know, I am a practitioner of time magic, although certainly not on the Back to the Future scale. And what I would have to say is that time magic is a new discipline. There are a number of people who do it, some are quite good at it, but it's nowhere near the kind of established metaphysical art that, say, for example, energetic healing is. And so the body of knowledge about it is much smaller. And so I'm speaking from a smaller frame of reference. But my understanding is that if one were to do that, one would not cease to exist, nor would the timeline that one came from be changed, or would it cease to exist, but rather you would create a secondary timeline. And this is part of the idea that there are many, many different timelines all going at once, each of which is different from the others, sometimes in small ways, sometimes in very large ways. And if you are a follower of science fiction, you may remember many years ago a science fiction program called Sliders, which dealt with this same idea. And we talk about this in the Third Degree book in more detail than I can go into in a vlog, but the idea is basically, to use the famous analogy from the Planet of the Apes, I guess it's a pop culture vlog today, there are many different lanes in the highway of time, and you can switch between them. And if, as in the scenario that Peter puts forth, you were to switch into the past of a different lane and change that past, then you would change its future. However, you cannot necessarily change the one that you come from. And you could not necessarily go back in the one that you came from, you could only go to a similar one and create a similar probability. And that would be my answer to that question. I hope you find it interesting. And if you're interested in this subject, I would recommend reading the Third Degree book, because we talk at much greater detail about this sort of situation and this kind of idea. And I would consider it to be one of the higher teachings, certainly one of the harder things to do. You know, in Kabbalah, it used to be said that you should not study until you were at least 40 years old and had children. And the idea behind this was that if you were not at least 40 years old and had children, you would not be grounded enough to be able to retain your sanity when dealing with issues of altering reality, which is what magic is all about. And I don't agree with that teaching, but I will say that you must be very grounded if you're going to work at that kind of level. And this is why the higher teachings are usually higher teachings. It takes a lot to work up to them, and it takes a lot to understand them, let alone to try to do them. So, I hope you find this conversation interesting, and until next time, may you blessed be. Today's vlog is brought to us by the term jostle.
Jostle. This term is used to indicate clockwise movement. It literally means southward, from the Gaelic jos, or south. Jostle movement represents the movement of spiritual energy into physical manifestation.